Hi, all, and welcome to Startup Fundraising 101. Today, we'll be discussing mastering your fundraising strategy. And to join me here today with Carta is Heather Hartnett from Human Ventures. My name is Natasha Arora, and I run BD for corporations at Carta. And today, we're going to talk about lots of information for you and many questions that you guys have had on fundraising strategies, how to raise in this current environment, things you need to know, and more for the current stages that your companies or your partners are at. And with that, I'll have Heather come on the stage and join us.
Hi, very nice to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for joining us. I know you have a wonderful background. And so without too much ado, let me give it over to you. And can you give us a little bit of a background on how you got to where you are today and, why you are an expert in this space?
Great. Yeah, sure. So my name is Heather Hartnett. I run a fund called Human Ventures. Together with my co-founder, Joan Marchese, we've been around in New York City since about 2015. And we specialize in pre-seed and seed stage, so early stage investing. As the name suggests, Human Ventures, we really care about what founders we're backing. I think that first and foremost, that's what you're doing in this industry. And when you're early stage investing, you're picking stock in people, and so that's really, the name says it all there. As Natasha was setting this up, I don't know that I'm an expert, but then you wake up and I've raised almost $100 million for our funds, over the last almost decade. And before that, I was raising money in nonprofit sectors. I was raising money for political campaigns. I think it's a human being thing to be able to sell, and to be able to believe in what you sell is really the name of the game with fundraising. I love that this is Startup Fundraising 101, but then it's mastering your fundraising strategy. So we're going to attempt to cover, some of the basics as well as some of the nuance.
Absolutely. And Heather, I've worked across the table from people like you my whole life. So prior to Carta background of me, y'all, I am an attorney in the emerging company and venture capital space. I've practiced for the past 7 or 8 years, facilitating folks like Heather on the venture capital side and many folks like y'all who are watching today who are founders. Over probably 1,000 transactions that I've done, many with VCs like Heather herself. I've seen the different strategies and fundraise strategies that folks have used in order to raise capital. And one of those really interesting ones, and I think that's on everyone's mind right now, Heather, is last year wasn't a great year to raise capital. We're going to dive right in. And, you and I have talked about this in the past. How do you raise capital? What do you look for as a VC to raise capital? What should founders right now be doing if they are interested in raising?
It's such a loaded question. So first of all, I think we should say I run a venture capital firm. So I venture invest, and venture investing is one type of way that startups can get funding, right? But not every startup should look for funding from venture capital. In fact, probably very few really should, and we'll get into that. But I think that as a founder, the first thing you should say is, what type of business am I creating? Where am I in that business life cycle? And what type of financing do I think I need? So I'm going to talk today from the venture standpoint. But I will say that right now, especially in this environment, cash is king. Like if you have a cash flow generating business, if you're profitable, there's a lot of opportunity to be able to get debt financing, to be able to finance inventory. There's so many creative ways to be able to infuse capital into your company. And venture financing is expensive. It's equity financing. So you're actually selling a part of your company for capital. And in exchange for that, you're really saying to this investor, I'm going to grow this company much faster because I'm infusing it with capital, and I'm going to be able to return your capital faster. So you have to know that you're signing up for a game that is that's pretty widely understood. And if you don't know some of that, that's what you really want to start to study, because those dynamics play into a lot of how you're actually going to raise capital or how you're going to be successful. So we'll start there. So, we'll go into actually venture investing. So, as you know, pre-seed, seed, Series A, these are all kind of names of rounds, and it means different things for different categories of businesses that you're creating. It means different things at different times in the economy. But generally, we're first check-in investors. Sometimes we help build the company. So we do build formation capital, which is like before the first check. It's really, the founder and an idea. And then as you raise subsequent rounds of funding, the bar rises for how much the company has manifested and how many, what's happening and what are the metrics that funds are looking for. You should know that no fund is the same. So people always say, what are Series A investors looking for across the table? And we will do polling, what Series A funds are looking for. Everybody has their own rubrics. And in venture, you're trying to differentiate yourself too, to be able to find those really special companies. So you will have a different way and lens of evaluating companies, and that's good. So Natasha, I'll stop there because
So jumping in with that, I know we're going to zoom in and hone in on just those folks who are interested in raising from venture right now. So what you just said, and I want to repeat for the group here, no investor is the same. No investor is going to look for the exact same thing as another investor, right, Heather? And they each have their own thesis and reason for investing in the company. Of course, there's going to be like hot companies that everyone wants to invest in and for certain reasons. But let's hone in, like, what makes a company viable, right? And so while we understand that there's nuance in everyone's investment thesis and every VC's reason for investing, if you had to sum it up to 3 things maybe right now in this current funding environment that you're looking for, what do you think, for you at least at Human Ventures, those 3 things would be?
Yeah, I think their first investor is probably the hardest one to get, right? Your very first check, because they're really just betting on you. So you have to make sure that you have a founder market fit, and that's what we call it, founder market fit. Why should you be the one creating this company? It is not, in the era where high or low interest rate capital was kind of, people were talking about free money, more people were coming into venture capital because there weren't a lot of other places you could make that money for that risk and reward profile. There were a lot more founders in the space. I think what I like about this type of environment is it really kind of weeds out the fair weather founders. You're not just starting a company because it's a cool thing to do, or you're in business school and you're like, I don't really know what to do when I come out of business school, so I'm going to found a company. Like, those things, in my opinion, are not the reasons to start companies. You are a founder because since you were little, you've manifested things, you've brought people together, you understand where the resources are, you build something, you have a unique angle. Like, when you're a founder and an entrepreneur, it doesn't just happen overnight. You don't decide to take a job as an entrepreneur. You are one from the beginning. And it doesn't mean that you've had venture-backed businesses, but it means that you'll see throughout your life that you were always enterprising. And I love to see that in founders. And, I think there's a lot of stats around how few dollars go to women founders, all this sort of stuff. I think the biggest, if you really take the venture landscape from the last 20 years, like the biggest defining factor is where you went to school. That Stanford and Harvard it's known that they're probably the most venture dollars have gone to those schools, and then whatever. And then how many unicorns came out of those schools? It's a huge amount. But what we're really starting to see now are, a layer deeper of the metrics, which I'm really excited about. I'm doing a breakfast on Tuesday here in New York about evaluating with a fund called Defiance Capital. They did a report on 2,500 unicorn founders, and they saw the attributes were really kind of amazing. I loved it, that actually the most outlier founders are not necessarily the ones that you would think. I mean, just a couple of stats here. 70% of unicorns have non-obvious founders. So that means immigrants, women, people of color. 70% of unicorns have that on the founding team. Unicorns used to only have male founders, but this is changing. 17% have a female founder in 2023. That's huge. 17% of those. 53% have degrees from the top 10 global universities. But that means the other 50% don't. And so I think one thing to think about here is, don't get discouraged if you feel like you don't fit in the exact mold that you see from all these people who are getting funded. However, know have some self-awareness that that's going to be much harder to raise. It's not going to be it's not going to be a shoe-in, because there's some ways that investors shortcut, whether it's where you went to school, because they know your kind of network, and they know that you're you have that kind of setup for success. The other way, if you nobody knows where you come from, all it means is they're not judging you for not doing that, but you have to really think about how you establish that trust really quickly with the person who's going to be funding you. And I think that there's shortcuts for trust, and that really does come from relationships. It comes from networks. It comes from things that people know and value and know how to evaluate. So I have a very non-traditional background. I was just talking to Natasha. I'm from the Midwest. There's, it's kind of an interesting way that I got here. I came from an entrepreneur. My father was, multiple time entrepreneur. So I just have been around founders forever. And I think you see the world very differently if you're only thinking about building rather than trying to fit into a box and check all the boxes off that investors are looking for.